Hey everyone, just wanted to come on here and share some thoughts and a little story that have been coming up recently in some meditations and ruminations of mine. And it's really something that has been prompted by a conversation that I had last week with Dr. Perry Nicholson of Stop Chasing Pain. Dr. Perry is someone who's formally trained as a chiropractor, but he treats people in a holistic manner based on what their ailments show, and he treats them with modalities that originate from all over the place, whether they're east or west. And what Dr. Perry shared with us is that whenever a patient comes to see him, he doesn't really focus much, if at all, on the localization of the pain. But what he does is that he rather has a conversation with them and asks them to share a little bit of their story with him. And that struck a chord with me. And why it struck a chord with me is because it reminded me of an experience that I had as I was going through my own battle with cancer. And really, this particular experience was my introduction into the world of cancer. And to give a bit of background, it was a procedure that I had to do, the very first thing that I had to do before anything else. Weeks after I got the diagnosis, was that I had to insert a feeding tube into my stomach. And the reason I had to do this was because the location of the cancer treatment would largely be focused around my mouth and my throat region, and the radiotherapy would leave this part of my body quite raw, and it would make it very difficult to drink water, let alone eat solid food. So to ensure that I was, sustained in terms of nutrition and whatnot, I needed to insert a feeding tube into my stomach so that I could have essentially a liquid diet. So I remember, going into this to have this procedure done. It was my very first, interaction basically in the hospital, putting on the gown and everything. And I was already going in with a state of fear and uncertainty and anxiety and stress and everything else that comes with, essentially living one day, living a normal life, and then the next being thrown into the world of being a cancer patient. So, going into this, I was already quite afraid. But I remember, them wheeling me into the operating theater, and the first thing they had to do was insert a catheter into my vein to administer the anesthetic, because I would be awake for this entire experience. And yeah, I remember that it took 12 failed attempts of trying to insert this catheter into my body before, the 13th time they successfully did it. That in itself was quite a traumatic experience. But then, that was only the beginning or the first step of the procedure. The second part of the procedure was then for them to insert a tube in through my nose and then down to my stomach. And what this would do would be to inflate my stomach so that it was closer to my abdominal wall, so that they could successfully insert the tube through my abdominal wall into my stomach. So this took, 3 failed attempts before on the 4th time it was, successful. And this was because each time they tried to insert it into my nose, it wouldn't go down my throat, it would curl back out through my mouth. And each time this happened, I was really unable to breathe, because firstly, there was something in my nose, and then secondly, there was something coming out of my throat and out of my mouth that was inciting the gag reflex, which made it very difficult for me to breathe out of my mouth as well. So, that put me in a very panic state each time. So yeah, again, after the third failed attempt, the fourth time, it was successful. And at that point, I was ready to have the incision made into my abdominal wall. And I remember distinctly that as the surgeon made the incision, I could feel them cutting into my abdominal wall. And of course, I reacted and I let them know that I can feel the pain. And they simply reassured me and just said, look, the anesthetic should be wearing in or should have already worn in. So yeah, just relax and it'll be over and done with quite soon. And, I couldn't feel the complete spectrum of pain, I suppose, but, I certainly felt them cutting and doing all the work throughout the whole procedure up until they patched me up. So yeah, after that whole procedure was all done, they simply wheeled me back into my place, into my resting bay, and closed the curtains around my bed. And I remember at that point, I simply was overwhelmed by that traumatic experience. And I just broke down in tears and I essentially sobbed myself into anesthetized slumber because there was no one around, but all I really needed was, someone to, put their hand on my shoulder or give me a hug or say that everything was okay. But like I said, none of my family members or anyone were around because, the timing they were told to return as a visitor, it hadn't elapsed yet. So yeah, I was by myself at that point, and I tell that story, I guess. First and foremost, I want to say that it's not an indictment on, the healthcare system or the workers in this industry or the nursing staff or the doctors or the surgeons or anything like this. Not at all. So don't get me wrong. I always say, and I give gratitude and thanks and tip my hat and a great deep bow of gratitude and respect to the nurses, doctors, and the frontline staff that took care of me personally all throughout my 8-month cancer treatment journey. Rather, I tell this story as a reminder. It serves as a reminder because it reminds us that there's something, there's a commonality that, sort of binds each and every single one of us. Underneath all the procedure, all the processes, all the protocols, all the rules and the regulations, underneath, the busyness of everyday life, underneath, the uniforms, the responsibility, underneath all of these things, and even underneath this sense of or need to meet certain, to meet certain targets and goals and to uphold some semblance of, consumer perspective and all these sorts of things. Underneath all of that we live through today, there's something that connects each and every one of us. And that is the fact that, we are each and all human beings and we're all living the human experience, right? And, the human experience, it inherently comes with, this challenge and the pressure of our contemporary or current times. And, we all have that, common understanding within each and every one of us. So for me, it reminds us that no matter who we are and no matter what professional hat that we wear or, personal opinions or views that we hold, no matter any of that, each and every one of us have the capability to show compassion, to be empathetic, to care, to show love, and to support and help, our fellow human beings, essentially, right? And this is true. Each of us have this capability But at the same time, if you're someone who feels like you don't have that capability to do so, that is fine. But the least that we can do in this situation is also, not judge or bring anyone else down who is also like us, going through the challenges and doing our very best to live in the best way that we know how at this point in time, right? I think it was Hippocrates that said, there is two things that we should make a habit of doing. The first is to help others, and the second is to at least do no harm. So I think that, this is, an apt thing and a great reminder. And this is what the story reminds me of. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I just wanted to talk about that and, again, remind us that we each are capable of, showing compassion and having an understanding, at least, that our fellow human beings, no matter who they are, no matter whether they're a stranger or someone that, we feel we know intimately, we are capable of, showing some sort of compassion and love and support and help to these people. And we really don't have any place to cast judgment, just because more often than not, we are going to not be privy to some part of their story. So how are we in any position to cast judgment if we cannot see the full picture? So yeah, I just wanted to come on here and, talk a little bit about that, and, and hope that serves as a reminder for each and every one of us. I want to thank, again, Dr. Perry Nickelston for, bringing that into my, field of consciousness and thought and rumination. If you want to check him out, check out the great work that he's doing at Stop Chasing Pain. And yeah, sending blessings and love to each and every one of you. Thank you for listening.